On this episode of the Clip Service Podcast. It's just me, guys. Rolla and Connor are busy on this fine Sunday. Uh, Also, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Connor and Rolla are busy, so I am going to do my best to soldier through this one by myself. So please bear with me. I'm going to do what I can to make this as fun and entertaining and informational as possible. Um, but yeah, the Clippers end up losing to the Minnesota Timberwolves, which was a bad one for a multitude of reasons. We'll get into that later in the show. Um, Win against the Bulls, which was awesome, but then unfortunately run into those damn Pelicans again, who seem to have had our number for several years. Lose the tiebreaker to them, unfortunately, and yeah, so the sky isn't falling yet, Clipper Nation, but things are a little bit shaky, and I'm going to do my best to stay positive and jump right into all of that. So, without further ado, let's make it happen. That's right, guys. This is the Clip Service Podcast. I am your host, Nick Jacobs. Today, Army of One, Jack of all trades, master of none. So let's have some fun out here in the sun, because I got some puns and it's just begun. So, yeah, thanks guys for tuning in. This is going to be about as unhinged of an episode as we can get. Um, but yeah, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. You can find us on Deezer. Find us on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. And you can also find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Clip Service Pod. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Lots to break down, guys. Most of it has been a little bit sour, not so great. But as I said up top, there's still a chunk of games left to go in the season. It isn't the end of the world, but the Clippers need to start getting back to playing the way that they were playing in December, and really taking care of business, looking like a good fourth quarter team. Um, you know, Sharing the ball, hitting open shots, and then we really haven't been an elite lockdown defense all season, but we used to be better than the way we are right now. The defense has been sliding a little bit. So yeah, just getting back into winning habits and also just trying to stay healthy. The Clippers have been, unfortunately, we looked pretty lucky for the first half of the season in terms of injuries, aside from a Ivica Zubac's injury. But the guys are taking knocks. Norm was seen after the Pelicans game walking away from the game in crutches, but apparently said that he was going to be ready to go for today's game against the Hawks on Sunday. So I don't know what that's all about, but Terrence Mann took a little bit of a knock in the Pelicans game. Obviously, the Kawhi Leonard back spasm thing is something to monitor. And then obviously Russ out with a broken hand until, for the foreseeable future. They say he's going to be back for the playoffs, which would be awesome, but that remains to be seen. So I think the biggest thing is Clippers just got to try and stay healthy just so we can get some reps with the guys that we are expected to play in the playoffs. And, the rotations that we're expected to roll out. We've been getting pretty good contributions from the guys that, have slid in to help out in the absences of a couple of guys. Bones Highland has been looking better and better, despite kind of a stinker against the Pelicans. I never thought I would say this, but PJ Tucker kind of stepped up in a big way. Although we lost against the Pelicans, it was good minutes from PJ Tucker. He was shooting his shots. He didn't take a ton, but he was hitting the shots that he was taking, and obviously shooting more than 0 shots a game. anything more than 0 shots a game is welcome, especially when he's hitting them. And he played, pretty sound defense in short bursts. So I got to give credit where it's due. PJ Tucker has stepped up a little bit, but yeah, I think health is the biggest thing for us right now, aside from just getting out of some bad habits. I will say that there are a few silver linings besides what I already mentioned. Paul George is kind of rounding out into form, which is a very welcome sight. He's had kind of an up and down year, which is a little bit perplexing because he is due for an extension this offseason. You'd think that he'd be playing at as high a level as he can possibly play, but we haven't really seen that with consistency this season, which has been frustrating. But can't say enough about the way that he's played the last 2 games, the Bulls game and the Pelicans game. He's looked really, really good. We'll talk about that more, or I will talk about that more once we get to that point of the show. But we're going to take a quick break, and I will be right back with your recaps from the last 3 games for the Los Angeles Clippers. All right, guys. We are going to be skipping out on what's going on just because it is just me, and I kind of wanted to keep this episode as short and concise as possible. So we are just going to jump right into the recaps. Since the last time that we talked, the Clippers played 3 games, a loss to the Timberwolves, a win against the Chicago Bulls, and another loss against the New Orleans Pelicans, which is seeming to be the norm for the Clippers for whatever reason. The last 4 seasons, I think our record's like 10-3, or their record, I should say, is 10-3 against us. So we haven't been winning a ton against the Pelicans. It's kind of a matchup thing, and I think that it's just like when you start to lose to a team multiple times in a row, I think a lot of it's kind of a mental thing too. But that's neither here nor there. So let's go ahead and get into this Timberwolves game first. The Clippers lose 118-110 behind a monster performance by Anthony Edwards. Ant-Man has had a MVP-esque second half of the season. He's really kind of put the team on his back, and obviously it's his team, but he's really showed that he can be a leader both defensively and offensively, especially in Karl-Anthony Towns' absence. Shot 29 field goal attempts, hit 15 of them, had a team high, game high actually, 37 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, was a plus 22. It was just a monster game from Anthony Edwards. He's confident that he kind of doesn't have, there's never a shot that he's afraid to take. And he's looked great. Mike Conley hit some big shots, which is kind of a tale as old as time. Against the Clippers for whatever reason. Whatever team he's been on, he's always kind of been one of those Clipper killers, and it showed. It showed in this game, particularly 23 points, hit 5 threes, and it was the timeliness of the threes that he hit too. That he was kind of just putting the Clippers away every chance that he got. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a giant game, 9 for 10 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3. 5 free throws out of 6, 28 points. He looked really, really good. Shea's cousin came out in full force against the Clippers in this one, and really it was just those 3 because the second, or the next closest scorer was Kyle Anderson with 10. Rudy Gobert only had 8. 0 points from Jaden McDaniels. So it was really those guys leading the charge. And the biggest disappointment that I had with this game was the Clippers. This game was just kind of a mess all the way around. For those of you that don't know, the Clippers got up to, I believe, a 22-point lead in the second quarter. And then there was footage of Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard went to the bench, sat down for a couple minutes, and then went right to the locker room. And then there was footage of Kawhi Leonard in street clothes leaving the arena. And it took a little while to get an update on why that was. There's a lot of speculation. Clippers Twitter was in a frenzy, rightfully so with Kawhi. You see him leaving the arena, you're going to expect the worst. So that was kind of frightening. And especially right in the middle of a game where we were up 22 and then the lead started being chipped away and chipped away. I think at the half, we only had an 8-point lead and things weren't looking good. The wheels were falling off fast in this one. And yeah, the Timberwolves kind of came out of the half with that momentum, still firmly in their hands and kind of put this one away quickly in the third quarter. Um, this wasn't a great game from the Clippers, kind of across the board. Paul George had 22 points, was relatively efficient, um, had 10 free throws, which was shocking. I feel like PG gets one of the worst whistles in the league. That might be a biased opinion, might not be, but that's the way I feel. 22 points, 5 for 11 from the field. Kawhi Leonard obviously only had 6 before he checked out after playing the full first quarter, 12 minutes, and checked out and left the arena with what they reported finally as back spasms. Um, 10 points from Ivica Zubac, 12 points from James Harden. James Harden's been dealing with a shoulder injury from what we've heard, and I think it was kind of just apparent in this one, as well as it has been the last few weeks. James Harden's looked a little bit slow, um, hasn't had as much aggression on offense, and it was apparent the further this game got away from us. We need more than 12 points from him, but yeah, the bench didn't really contribute much. Norman Powell had 11 points. You kind of expect him to have at least that. But aside from that, Daniel Tice with 10, and nothing really else from anybody. Bones Highland only 8, Amir Coffey only 8. So yeah, this one was just disappointing. With everything that was hanging in the balance. With us being relatively close to the Timberwolves and, 1 through 3 being so close and us kind of just hanging out on the outside of that. This was a game that we needed to win at this point in time. This was probably the biggest game of the season, just everything considered, tiebreaker situation, season series situation, and then just standings in general. This was one that we needed to win. And the fact that we were up by 22, even though Kawhi Leonard checked out of the game, this has got to be one where you count on Paul George and James Harden to kind of just keep the lead and do what they're supposed to do. And we really didn't see much of that. Anthony Edwards took advantage of Kawhi being out and really had his way. We were kind of late to defensive rotations, some open threes, particularly from Mike Conley. This one was hard to watch with each minute that went by. And like I said, the Timberwolves kind of took over the game there in the third. And it was kind of all Timberwolves from that point on. Anthony Edwards touched on it after the game was over in the post-game interview and said that, when Kawhi went out, it was kind of just a battle of mismatches. He was kind of picking and choosing who he got his buckets against, and the Clippers weren't providing a whole lot of resistance. So this one was just tough. I kind of don't want to talk much more about it other than the fact that these are games that, obviously it's tough losing Kawhi. At that point in time, there wasn't a clear idea of how bad his back spasms were. He's leaving. I'm sure that all the Clippers, aside from him, obviously, were pretty concerned with the situation, especially him leaving the arena. Apparently, they just wanted to allow him to rest properly, and him sitting on the bench wasn't a great way to do that. So that's why he left. But at the time, you can see that the guys on the floor were kind of shook, and I think that losing Kawhi was a big part of that. So. But yeah, I mean, despite losing Kawhi, this is one that you got to count on your stars and your bench to kind of just keep. I mean, a 20-point lead, 22-point lead is nothing to scoff at. And I know that leads disappear in the blink of an eye in the league, but that's a lead that we can try and maintain, especially if we want to be a championship team this season. We have to do a better job of taking these games seriously and putting these games away, especially when it's right there in front of us with a lead like that. So yeah, this one was tough. And I think there was, rightfully so, a lot of negative reaction from Clipper fans, on Twitter, on social media. And, this kind of been the story since the All-Star break. We've been letting letting leads disappear late games, which is weird because we were such a great fourth quarter team prior to the All-Star break. But that really hasn't been the case. Against the Lakers, we saw it. Against the Bucks team without Giannis, we saw it. Leads dissipating and evaporating, and we end up taking losses that we should be winning. And with everything with everything being so close in the standings, these are games that you need to win because against harder opponents and stuff like that, those games become a lot more impactful and a lot more important when you lose games that you're supposed to win. So yeah, this one was a tough pill to swallow. But I think all eyes were focused on the Kawhi Leonard situation. We go nowhere without Kawhi, and there wasn't a super clear idea of when he would be back, if he'd be playing. Prior to the Bulls game, he was listed as questionable, and obviously that game was an away game. So we weren't really sure if Kawhi Leonard would even be a part of that little quick road trip, but there was a silver lining, guys. And there was a picture posted on Instagram by the LA Clippers media team that showed Kawhi Leonard boarding the plane for the road trip. So at that point, things were kind of, Clipper fans were feeling a little bit more optimistic, I think. And Kawhi Leonard ended up playing in this one. The Clippers took the win 126 to 111. This one wasn't as much of a nail biter as the last one we played against the Bulls. And one of the biggest takeaways for me in this one was Paul George looked incredible. This was probably Paul George's best game. Paul George had scored more in previous games this season, but just the efficiency from Paul George and the aggressiveness. 11 for 12 from the field. He shot like plus 90% for this game with 28 points, 6 for 7 from three. Didn't get any free throws, which is not shocking at this point, but chipped in with 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, only 1 turnover. Did have 4 fouls, but I think that in this game, it was just kind of went hand in hand with his aggressiveness. And this was a vintage 2-on-3 game too. 28 from Paul George, but 27 from Kawhi when he wasn't really expected to play. And so this was really a really important game to be aggressive in, and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George really rose to the occasion, which was awesome to see. Like I said, 27 from Kawhi, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. This was awesome. And then another takeaway that I'm sure myself and most of Clipper Nation can agree on is Bones Highland. This might have been the best Bones Highland game since he's been a Clipper. 17 points, 11 assists, 4 steals, and only 1 turnover. This was a career high in assists and steals for Bones. He got the start in Russ's absence. I think this was his first start. I don't believe he started against the Timberwolves, and he really rose to the occasion, man. Like, Bones Highland looked efficient, looked poised, and looked aggressive. And the 11 assists, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and 17 points. It's just a testament to Bones's ability to kind of step into this role that is there for the taking without Russ. So loved that from Bones. A good game from Terrence Mann. Wasn't particularly efficient, but chipped in with 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. Terrence has kind of been up and down all season, but this was one where, he showed that he can make an impact without necessarily filling up the stat sheet. 18 from Norm. Norm's been great. Not really much else to say other than that. This one was a win that we desperately needed. That's the one thing that the Clippers have been doing pretty consistently this season, is bouncing back from a tough loss, putting it in the rear view, and finding a way to take a bounce back win. And we did that in this one. DeMar DeRozan had 21 points, which obviously I think the night before this game, he scored 40 something points. So obviously he can still get buckets in bunches at this point in his career, but we kind of relatively kept him in check. Only 21 points, 19 from Vooch, 17 from Caruso. There were a little too many open Alex Caruso threes for my liking in this one, but obviously we found a way to mitigate that. They didn't have Kobe White. He took a pretty nasty fall or got injured. I think it was some sort of leg injury the day before this game. So they didn't have him, which was a big loss for them. He's been probably my pick for most improved player this season, and he's had a hell of a season so far. But yeah, the Clippers took advantage of that, and took advantage of a team on the second night of a back to back. I think they went to overtime in their game too. So this was really a welcome sight to be able to kind of put this one away when we should. Because you play a team on the second night of a back to back. We're on the road. This is when we got to take advantage of, and we did. So that was awesome to see. But all eyes were kind of, even during this game, all eyes were kind of on the next game, which was, I believe it was the second night of a back to back. I don't even remember anymore. Let me see. Yeah, so we played the Bulls on Thursday, and then we played the Pelicans on Friday, and that was kind of the rain cloud hanging over the Clippers even during this Bulls game. Obviously, we needed to win this Bulls game, and a big part of that was we have the Pelicans immediately the day after, and this is a team that really gives it to the Clippers. They've found a way to take advantage of whatever mismatches are presented to them when we play against them, and the biggest of which, both literally and figuratively, was Zion Williamson. Zion finished the game with 34 points, was 14 for 21 from the field, no threes, everything was at the rim. Got to the line a bunch. 10 attempts, was only 6 for 10, but if the Clippers weren't able to stop him, he was getting to the line and giving himself a chance to score in that way. Not much else needs to be said other than the fact that Zion really dominated the Clippers in every way in this one. We threw a bunch of different defenders at him. Zoo, Plumlee even got a chance. And then one thing I wanted to touch on was PJ Tucker ended up getting 24 minutes in this one. Ty Lue was kind of using him as a pseudo stopper against Zion. Obviously, it didn't work, but I really did like what I saw for the most part from PJ Tucker in this one, particularly in the offensive end. Only took 3 field goal attempts. All of them were threes, but he hit 2 of them. And that's, it's not asking a lot, relatively speaking, but with PJ Tucker and how he's looked when he's presented with a shot opportunity this season, he's been passing up shots and he's looked really, really shy behind the arc. But in this one, he kind of let it fly in PJ Tucker standards. Let it fly. 3 threes is a lot more than we've seen him shoot prior to this game. So that was a welcome sight. And he did play, relatively good defense. When he was out there, obviously, like I said, there's not much you can do when Zion is cruising like that. But 3 blocks from PJ Tucker in 24 minutes, we'll take that. This one, Bones got the start again. This one was not a good game for Bones. And, we're going to kind of see that from time to time, but you can't really expect too much more than we've seen from him just based on the amount of minutes that he's gotten this season. But only 5 points from Bones, 26 and 23 from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard respectively, which was good. I don't think that they particularly had a bad game. Paul George continued to look aggressive in this one, but again, the name of the game was Zion Williamson, and this was a quiet game from Brandon Ingram, only 13 points. It was really just the Zion show. And then in the fourth, I think my biggest knock on the Clippers in this one was, yeah, okay, Zion Williamson is cooking, but I think in the fourth we were kind of playing reactionary defense, and what I mean by that is we were trying to throw the kitchen sink at him. But when Zion's cruising like this, he's such a big body and he's so quick with his first step that there's really not much you can do. And by overcommitting to him, we left guys like Trey Murphy and Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado and who else? CJ McCollum. Herb Jones. We were leaving all these guys open from 3, and in the fourth, those were kind of the guys that put us away. It was relatively close in the fourth, and the Clippers had a chance to kind of regain momentum and regain the lead, but Zion would just drive to the basket. And if any of those guys were open, he'd kick it out to them, and they were wide open, and they hit some big shots. And that seems to be, in my opinion, that's my biggest kind of bugaboo when we play against the Pelicans is overreacting to guys like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson going off, and we end up losing track of their shooters. And they have guys that hit that can hit shots and hit big shots, and those are the guys that always seem to be putting us away. Trey Murphy and Herb Jones particularly always seem to be the ones that hit the three that kind of just puts the lead out of reach for the Clippers. And if we end up playing the Pelicans in the playoffs, which it's looking like it's probably about a 50% chance now at this point. I mean, as the standings sit right now, the Clippers are, let me pull this up right now. The Clippers are 3.5 games out of the third seeded Minnesota Timberwolves, and only 2.5 games away from the New Orleans Pelicans in fifth. So unless the Clippers can kind of go on a big run, which we can certainly do, I think the next 10 games or so are relatively winnable games. We have the Portland Trailblazers a couple times. We play an injured Philly team. We play the Hawks today, who haven't been playing that well, and they don't obviously have Trae Young. We can string together some wins, but we really have to play at an elite level if we want to get a top 3 seed now. 3.5 games out of the third seed is, that's going to be a big task, especially with how good the Thunder, the Nuggets, and the Timberwolves are all playing. It's looking like it might be a New Orleans Pelicans, LA Clippers first round matchup. And if that's the case, I think that our biggest point of emphasis needs to be, okay, if you see Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram really getting into that groove where there's not much you can do to stop them, I think that we have the defensive personnel to where we can run single coverage on those guys. Don't overreact to those guys going off, and make sure that you keep guys like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Jose Alvarado and Najee Marshall, and even for whatever reason, Jonas Valanciunas, who looks like Steph Curry against us, but then looks like Ivica Zubats behind the 3-point line against everybody else. These are guys that we have to keep in check as well, because they step up to the occasion more times than not, and they are the ones that put the nail in the coffin against the Clippers more time than not. So if we do end up seeing this Pelican team in the playoffs, I think more than anything, that needs to be the point of emphasis. You kind of saw the Clippers do that sort of strategy against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks the 2 times that we played them in the playoffs. It's when a player gets into a groove to where they kind of can't be stopped, because these players are so talented, especially offensively nowadays, that sometimes they get in a zone where it doesn't matter if you throw triples at them, they will hit that shot. And if that happens, you almost need to say, okay, we're going to let Zion cook. We're going to run single coverage. We're going to honor him, but we're not going to send doubles at him, because there's a bunch of other guys waiting in the wings, ready to catch that ball and just pull the trigger and hit big shots against us. So I think that needs to be the biggest point of emphasis, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. Obviously, I am not hoping that we see the New Orleans Pelicans in a playoff series, but I think if we do, and I think if we stick to that game plan based on our playoff experience in relation to theirs, I think we can win that series. And, a lot of Clipper fans might push back on that because of our regular season record against these guys. But this is a series that I think that we can win, but we have to be disciplined, and we have to have a sound game plan. And I do trust Ty Lue to be able to provide that. He's been in some of the toughest positions in the playoffs and rose to the occasion, obviously bringing the Cavs team back from a 3-1 deficit to win the championship against the Golden State Warriors, I believe in 2016. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, I mean, bottom line, this was a tough loss as well. Just with how dominant the Pelicans always seem against us. And then unfortunately we do lose the tiebreaker to the Pelicans. So if it ever comes down to the Clippers and the Pelicans having an identical record, the tiebreaker would unfortunately go to the Pelicans, and then the Clippers would lose home court advantage, which is something that I think needs to be the point of emphasis going forward. Is the Clippers just need to keep a top 4 seed, because if we become an away team in the first 2 games of a playoff series, doesn't matter who we play, I think that we're in some serious trouble. So that's what we got to avoid. I think avoiding a 5 seed or lower, and then staying healthy, I think needs to be the name of the game moving forward for the Clippers. But guys, we're going to take a quick break, and I am going to get right back to you with recaps for the next 3 games, 3 or 4 games, including one tonight against the Atlanta Hawks at 6:30. So I will be right back with you guys on that. Alrighty, guys. We are back, and I am going to just jump right into previews. Um, the first game of which would be a 6:30 game today on the 17th of March, a Sunday, um, against the Atlanta Hawks. Um, the Hawks don't have Trae Young, which is huge, obviously. He's their best player, one of the better players in the league, having a really good season despite, kind of being overshadowed by a lot of other guys, Shea Gilgeous, Nikola Jokic, as always, Anthony Edwards. But yeah, Trae is out with a finger. He had a torn radial collateral ligament in the fifth finger of his left hand. So I think he underwent surgery and he'll be reevaluated in 4 weeks. It's a tough blow for the Hawks. They are dealing with a multitude of injuries. Sadiq Bey tore his ACL, which was horrible to watch. His leg bent back, and it just didn't look good. Kind of feared the worst watching it happen. Kongwu, uh, some sort of toe injury. So they have they have a lot of injuries that they're dealing with, and I just hope that this isn't a trap game because when the Clippers face teams, or lately when the Clippers have faced teams that are missing their best players, or games that we should be winning. Clippers have had a tendency to kind of let leads slip and not take the game seriously from the jump. So this needs to be a win for us in the worst way possible, coming after a bad loss to the Pelicans. And I'm assuming that one thing I didn't touch on is James Harden missed the Pelicans game for rest on his shoulder, which I think personally is obviously I don't want him to be injured, but I think him getting some rest is really, really big, especially this late in the regular season. He's played every game since he's been a Clipper prior to this one, and then I think the one against the Bulls, we didn't have him either. Again, let me double check. Yeah, so he that's when Bones got his first start. So yeah, so he's missed the last two games. I would assume that he's probably going to miss this one, and I think a little bit of rest for James Harden will be good, not only for him but for the Clippers in general. We do need him for the playoffs, obviously, and he's looked a little bit slow. He's looked tired. He didn't get a full off season to get in shape, obviously, with the whole Daryl Morey Philadelphia 76ers nonsense. I'm sure that he wasn't at most, if any, of those warm-ups, preseason workouts, this and that. So I think that this particular little stint of rest for him is a welcome sight for both the team and for him. It gives Bones a chance to kind of sharpen himself and get himself ready for hopefully a little bit of playoff minutes. So I'm assuming that James Harden is going to miss this one. I haven't checked the injury report yet, but I think last time I checked, he was questionable. We do have Kawhi back, which is great. As I said before, he played against the Bulls and he played against the Pelicans. While we did lose against the Pelicans, having Kawhi back is obviously a big plus, especially with the way Paul George is playing, to have those two play off each other and get right for the playoffs. With Paul George playing at his best stretch that he's had, although it's been 2 games, his best stretch that he's had in a while. So I think that we have more than enough talent to be able to take care of an injured Hawks team. I believe this is an away game as well. Oh no, you know what? This is a home game, so we're back home. Yeah, this is even more so another reason for us to win this game. Our upcoming stretch, after playing a pretty tough stretch of 5-7s and back-to-backs and all this stuff, our next little stretch is made up of a lot of winnable games. We have the Hawks, Portland back-to-back, Philadelphia. Obviously, Philadelphia doesn't have Joel Embiid. I'll talk about that more when we get there. But Indiana, who's obviously very, very good offensively, but they've kind of been sliding a little bit of late. Philly again, Orlando, Charlotte, and then that's when things start getting a little bit harder. But I think that next stretch of about 7 or 8 or 9 games, this is going to be a very important stretch, not in the sense that we're going to be playing teams that we'll see in the playoffs per se, but we can really find a way to handle business and practice something that we've been lacking on in putting teams away and keeping teams away from gaining momentum. And I think that starts with this Hawks game. So I would love to be able to win this game in the first half, and let some of our young guys play and let some of our stars get some rest with the amount of knocks that we've taken. Also, I'm assuming that Norman Powell is questionable. Actually, I believe the last thing I checked was that he was questionable. As I said before, he left the Pelicans game in crutches. He was just taking knock after knock. That's another thing with the Pelicans game. Sorry to deviate, guys. Like I said, this episode is going to be all over the place, but the Pelicans kind of got away with a lot of really, really physical defense, and the Clippers weren't really getting the same whistle. Obviously, that's not an excuse. The officiating is really never an excuse. But a lot of our guys were taking knocks. Terrence Mann went to the locker room. He ended up being okay, but Norman Powell was limping, it seemed like, the whole second half. So hopefully Norm's okay. Like I said, health is the name of the game. We need a healthy Clipper team going into the playoffs, because we've shown time and time again what a dominant team we can be when we're healthy and we're rolling. So that's the most important thing. But yeah, hopefully we can take a win against this Atlanta team and do it early, and make a statement. Show everybody that's been scrutinizing us, and rightfully so. But show everybody that we can beat teams that we're supposed to beat, and we can do it quickly and efficiently and effectively. And then we play the Portland Trailblazers back to back, Wednesday and Friday. This, it kind of goes without saying. I'm not trying to hate on the Trailblazers, but 30th in assists per game, 26th in rebounds per game, 28th in points per game, 17th in defense. This is most definitely a chance for the Clippers to win two, hopefully three in a row, but certainly two against the Trailblazers back to back. They're dealing with, I believe they're dealing with some injuries as well, but they're starting to play their younger guys. Scoot Henderson's playing a lot more minutes. Delano Banton, Tomani Kamara, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Guys that have kind of been pushed back to the bench are starting to get a little bit more playing time. I think it's safe to say that the Trailblazers are probably starting to not tank the season, because I hate that, but they're not putting a premium on winning. And again, hopefully this isn't a trap game, because these are the games that we need to take advantage of, with everything still so close, us fighting to stay out of the 5th seed, us fighting to be a 3rd seed. These are the games that we need to win, because the Clippers have a tougher stretch to finish off. The tail end of the regular season becomes a little bit harder. So Clippers got to take advantage of this one. Scoot Henderson's been playing well. Whenever DeAndre Ayton wants to play well, he does. And then they still have Anthony Simons, who's a very, very good young player, can shoot lights out, one of the best catch and shoot players in the league last year, and I think that he's kind of been the same this year. They have Jeremy Grant. I don't know if he's playing or not, but Malcolm Brogdon is back. I think I need to do a better job researching the injury report, guys. But that's neither here nor there. I think the big thing, the driving force in this, is we need to be able to take these wins. So hopefully we can do that. Whether or not we have James Harden in these games, I think is pretty inconsequential, just based on the talent level that we have in comparison to them at this point. So back-to-back games against the Portland Trailblazers, and then on Sunday we played the Philadelphia 76ers, who have been sliding a little bit. They obviously still have Tyrese Maxey, who's back from he was injured for a little while, but I mean, he's having a fantastic season. And he's obviously some guy that we got to account for. But other than that, they really don't have a ton of talent at their disposal right now. Tobias Harris obviously can get it going, and Kelly Oubre is always, a guy that can score in bunches. Buddy Hield, they got before the trade deadline. So they have guys that can score, but this is another game that we should be able to win. They're 11th in defense, 14th in points per game, 21st in rebounds per game, 26th in assists. So really, if that shows anything, I think it's that Tyrese Maxey and some of their other top tier guys that they have right now are kind of doing a little bit of everything. And if we can kind of cut the head off the snake and this one, which in this case would be Tyrese Maxey if he's available to play, um, then that needs to be the point of emphasis, particularly because he is, he's only 6'2". He's not this big hulking point guard or big, super athletic forward or anything like that. And the Clippers do really well against, I mean, we saw it when Dame and CJ were still on the Trailblazers. The Clippers do really well against teams that have, undersized, guards that aren't particularly known for their defense. Tyrese Maxey obviously works hard defensively, but he is physically limited. So yeah, I think with this next stretch of games, Clippers need to try and sharpen themselves, and get right mentally, because I think that's been the biggest thing that we've had missing, particularly since the All-Star break, is the mental toughness and the focus, attention to detail. Um, Ty Lue has talked about it after the tough losses that we've taken against like the Lakers and the Bucks without Giannis, and the Timberwolves game where we blew the 22-point lead. Although we didn't have Kawhi, that was a game that we should have won as well, and I put that in the same category as the other ones. But Ty Lue touched on it, and he said, it seems to be a broken record situation where he always reiterates, we weren't the mentally tough team tonight, or we weren't the most aggressive team tonight, and that's something that we need to focus on. And I couldn't agree more. And the one thing I like about Ty Lue, like I've said time and time again this season, is he does take accountability for that kind of thing, and he says it starts with me. So I do trust Ty Lue to kind of get the guys right from that perspective, or from that. With that point of emphasis in mind, is just get aggressive, not just physically, but get aggressive mentally, and feel like you're the team that you were in December, that can beat whoever's in front of them. That kind of gives me hope, because that's something that can be fixed in the span of one game. It's not something that takes a lot of practice or takes a lot of reps, or something that you need to wake up at 6 a.m. for. It's something that you just have to go out there and do. And I really do believe that the Clippers will kind of get things right, because I have to, but because I actually, I really do think that, the dominant stretch that we saw in December wasn't just a fluke. While it seems like we're pretty far removed from that, it's something that we can get back into, and I really believe that we will. So it starts with Ty Lue. It's a trickle down effect to all the other players. And this is going to be a stretch that we can really, really sharpen that facet of our game and our team. So yeah, I think that I think that pretty much covers it for this show. Thank you guys so much for pairing with me. Sorry we didn't have the usual cast of hosts, but I tried my best, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Amazon Music, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Deezer. You can find us on YouTube, of course, and then get at us on Twitter and on Instagram at Clip Service Pod. Let us know what you think of the podcast. I can't talk today. Sorry about that, guys. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know how you like the episode, and give us a 5-star review wherever you can. We really appreciate all the support that we've been getting. Yeah. So that does it. We move, we march, and as always, guys, let's go Clips.